Doha, Qatar for us. Kylie, thank you very much. I want to continue this conversation right now. Joining us, Congressman Jared Moskowitz. He's a Democrat from Florida. He's also a key member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. As you heard, Secretary of State Blinken today questioning whether Hamas is actually negotiating in good faith, but believes, and I'm quoting him now, the gaps are bridgeable. That's a direct quote. Are you optimistic, Congressman, I know you're well plugged into all of this, that a peace deal between Israel and Hamas can still be struck?
Well, thanks, Wolf. Thanks for having me. Look, I hope so. But so far, right, there's not a lot of evidence to point to that. I think Hamas has been stringing not just the Israelis, the U.S., but the world along. If you listen to Sinwar, who is sitting, 10 stories below the ground where he's safe, I mean, he has talked about how Palestinian deaths, civilians, are a necessary sacrifice in the war. That is the evil that we are dealing with. So I don't know that Hamas is negotiating in good faith. The Palestinians, the people in Gaza, need a ceasefire. I mean, look what they're doing. They're keeping civilians in areas that are filled, they're keeping hostages in areas filled with civilians. And they're doing that on purpose, right? Why? Because they just want to win the media war at the expense of those innocent civilians. And so it's time for the world to put pressure on Hamas. All the pressure's on Israel. It's time for the world to put pressure on Hamas to agree to a ceasefire and bring this war to an end.
As you know, Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, says he wants a permanent ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's not going to do that, at least not now. His hardline allies in his cabinet have threatened to implode the entire coalition if he were to launch an immediate Israeli withdrawal from all of Gaza. Is a peace agreement even possible? Do you think some of your Democratic colleagues in the House don't believe it's even possible with Netanyahu as Israel's prime minister?
Well, look, he's the democratically elected leader of Israel. So he's the person we have to deal with in Israel, right? And so, if they have elections there and there's somebody new, wonderful for them. But right now, that's who's negotiating on their behalf. Look, Israel has agreed to the ceasefire proposed by President Biden. So we can focus on Netanyahu all we want, but they have agreed to the ceasefire. It is Hamas who has not agreed to the ceasefire. So if the war goes on, it's because Hamas wants the war to go on. If there are more civilians that get killed in the war, it's because Hamas wants that to happen in order to sell that propaganda to America and around the world. So the Israelis have agreed to the ceasefire as proposed by President Biden.
As you know, in the northern part of Israel and South Lebanon, Hezbollah is saying it's retaliating right now, launching these dozens and dozens of rockets into northern Israel for killing one of its commanders yesterday. At least 200 rockets in all were fired into Israel overnight. As you know, 30 or 50,000, maybe more, Israelis have been evacuated from northern Israel and the Galilee elsewhere in Israel because of the dangers right now, the possibility of a full-scale war erupting. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said Israel is prepared for strong action in the northern part of the country. Are you worried, Congressman, that all of this could escalate into a second front of the war and potentially an even more dangerous, brutal war?
I am. President Biden did a fantastic job in the very beginning, sending a strong message to try to contain this. But let's be honest, Hezbollah and Iran sense an opportunity. They sense an opportunity because they see the world shunning Israel based on the propaganda that Hamas has sold and anti-Semitism that exists, that is being tapped into. They see the UN going after Israel. They see the ICC, who has no jurisdiction, going after Israel. They see the protests on college campuses. They see the Death to America chants. They see the Jews go back to Poland, right? They see the kill all Zionists. They're watching everything. And they sense an opportunity. And that's why they're escalating. And it's why right now the world needs to put as much pressure on Hamas as possible to agree to a ceasefire. If we get that ceasefire, this thing that's going on between Israel and Hezbollah will tamp down.
And in a related development, and I know a subject very close to your heart, I want to turn to another story briefly while I have you, Congressman. Last night, I don't know if you know this, but vandals targeted the homes of several Jewish board members of the Brooklyn Museum, including its Jewish director. They splattered the homes, as you can see there, with red paint and anti-Semitic symbols. The New York Police Department Hate Crimes Task Force is investigating. What's your reaction to this rising wave of anti-Semitism that's connected to the Israel-Hamas war?
Well, I mean, look, that's the one thing that the right and the left of this country have a lot in common, and that's the hate of Jews, whether it's Nazis protesting in front of Disney World in Florida or watching students on college campuses saying, you know, all Zionists should die or go back to Poland, right, which is no different than what was chanted in Charlottesville, which is Jews shall not replace us. The protests in New York in front of the memorial for the Nova Festival, where hundreds of people were slaughtered, is disgusting. We would never tolerate people protesting in front of the 9/11 memorial on behalf of Osama bin Laden. I mean, and that's what's happening in New York City, and it's anti-Semitism that is growing around the country, right? We've seen this show before, right? This is never late, right? It's always blame the Jews. This has been going on for thousands of years, but right now the Jewish community is at an inflection point, and we need our allies to stand with us. The Jewish community has stood with many people, many different races, ethnic backgrounds, over hundreds of years fighting for things, and now we need those allies to stand up for the Jewish community, because we are being targeted, not because of Israel, but because we're Jewish, period. Okay? It's disgusting. President Biden's done a great job standing up against anti-Semitism. My colleagues, my Republican colleagues in the House have done a good job. And so we need an all-of-government approach. We need Democrats and Republicans to stand up to the extremism in both of their parties in order to tackle this anti-Semitism problem.
And what do you say, Congressman, to some of your Jewish Democratic colleagues in the House who are very, very critical of Israel?
Well, look, I think you can criticize a government. I think you can criticize a leader without being anti-Semitic. That is possible, right? You can absolutely do that. The problem in the streets is that's not what we see, right? We don't see down with Netanyahu. We see down with Zionists. We don't see Netanyahu go back to Poland. We say Jews go back to Poland. It's not Jews that are conflating it. It's the people who are protesting, right? I didn't see one single college student during the protests come out and say, hey, look, I'm here to help the Palestinians. I'm here to help, you know, free Gaza. The folks over there that want to, you know, kill all Jews, they're not with me. I didn't see one student do that, okay? And so that's what this movement has become. This movement has become anti-Jewish. It's not become anti-Israel.
Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida, thanks so much for joining us.